Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Knife Guy. So what are we talking about today? Today we're going to be talking about something that I have absolutely talked about before. I repeat a lot of topics because of how quickly this channel is growing. The vast majority of people who are subscribed have actually not heard me speak on this, and it's something that I like to speak on fairly regularly so that new people especially can understand. This is a confusing topic to new people. How do I know that? My most viewed video of all time shows my collection. It's a short, actually, and the number one thing that is repeated, the number one question that is repeated in that video is, why do you have so many knives that you don't use? This is a question that is automatically assumed because people see knives in cases. If you're new to my channel, I bet you anything you've been wondering that. Why do you have so many knives that you don't use? Knives are supposed to be used. They're not supposed to be this or blah, 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 right? Guarantee it. There's a whole bunch of people who have been watching who have wondered that too, maybe since the beginning of this channel. But yeah, that question is, it's a position that is assumed, right? Because I keep knives in cases. It's funny to me that people are like, because they are in cases, they are not used. Like those two things are just, they're one and the same, right? Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Out on the table today are a whole bunch of knives that are either rare or expensive or both, right? Now, some of these knives are users, and some of them are not. Oh, he just says that. I'm sure. That guy just says that. These guys who buy this stuff, they don't actually use expensive knives, right? There's no way. I mean, even if he does, right? It's not like he's going to use it on anything that would be really hardcore on the edge, right? I mean, he's not, there's no way he would use a $1,500 pocket knife to cut through something like an aluminum can. Yeah. Now, those of you who are cringing, right? Those of you who maybe think like me, obviously I am a knife collector and enthusiast, right? I love to maintain the perfectness of a knife in some cases, right? So watching me do that has made you cringe. You might even feel compelled to say, Metal Complex, how dare you? How dare you? That is a beautiful work of art. The Rockstead Ego 2 is not only expensive, but it is a beautiful work of art. If that were me, I would not stop. But it isn't you. It isn't you. It's me. It's my property, right? Now, people always think that, you do that to a knife and it's not going to function. Are you surprised? There's a whole bunch of you going, holy crap. Surely that would ruin the finish, right? Or it would ruin the edge and make it, not able to cut anymore. There's a whole bunch of you who just realize that you might not know as much as you think. The Rockstead's fine. It doesn't have a tip. That's a user. It's a real user, right? You can tell yourself that that's not the case of people like me who buy expensive knives, right? But it is in some cases, or in some cases it isn't. There's a whole bunch of different people. Number one, the main thing to remind yourself of is it isn't your property. You are not the only mind that is at play here. You're not the only opinion that is at play here. In fact, of the opinions that are at play, yours, if you do not own the property, is not only it's not just saying, it's one thing to say it's the least important, but it is not important, period. Now, instead of coming down on other people for their views, right, because everybody is absolutely entitled to their own opinion, instead, I tried to look inward, right? Oh, I'm such a good person. I'm such an enlightened person to look inward. But no, seriously, I did. Instead of coming down on other people and preaching at other people, because listen, the truth is that I am uploading content. I am subjecting my thoughts. I am subjecting my enthusiast habits, my knife collector habits to the knife world, to the internet, right? Of course, I'm going to be met with, a contrasting opinion, even if it is not someone who owns the stuff that I like. Of course, this is my stuff, and of course I can do whatever I want with it, but people are going to comment based on how they feel. We are selfish as human beings. The reason that we leave our opinions, the reason that we feel we must tell people what we think is because we're all about us, right? How it makes us feel, what we would do in a similar scenario, what we would do with said property, right? Whether or not it's our property, it goes out the window. Well, think about this. This is what I did. And I've done it before on the channel, right? I've made fun of people who drive Honda Civics and put 22-inch rims on them. Man, cringe. If that was me, I wouldn't be caught dead driving side. But I don't stop to think, what? I'm not the one who paid for it. I didn't pay for that. The person who drove by and doesn't even know that me and my dumb opinions exist, they paid for it. Literally me. I'm standing, like in that moment, I thought about what I am actually doing as a physical being and the thoughts that I am projecting. I am making myself feel better by projecting my thoughts onto this thing that exists. Whether or not I like it, it exists. There it is. It's going. There's a person driving this Honda Civic. I don't know this person. I don't know anything about this person, but there they go. They're driving by in this thing that exists, whether I love it or not. And I see it and it makes me feel frustrated. Ooh, darn it. Darn that Honda Civic and those 22-inch rims. I would never do that, and I find it unappealing. I find it a this or a that. But as I continue to project these thoughts that for some reason, and I haven't zeroed in on it, I don't know why, I'm getting I don't even know if I'm getting satisfaction out of saying it to myself. As I'm saying this vehicle is traveling further and further and further away from me. And the operator of said vehicle, his universe does not involve me. His universe has no idea that I exist. He's just going away. There he goes. And my opinions affect his world in absolutely no way, shape, or form. And they shouldn't, because I didn't pay for it. The same thing goes with things like art. I don't really understand art. But I've tried to, instead of coming down on it, like, who'd ever put, this is even cringy to label it this way, but don't get offended. Don't get offended. It's kind of a boomer take, right? Who would ever spend this much money on art? I'm not paying for it, right? It's not me. Obviously, I'm not the one who is paying for it. This is a rectangle with an image that somebody created. It's being hung on a wall. Presumably, the wall of the person who paid for it. The person who finds joy in this thing. The person who will, maybe the one person on earth who will enjoy it X amount of dollars. The same X amount of dollars that I find for some reason internally offensive. I've realized I'm letting these things bother me. I've realized digging deep enough, what it meant was the Honda Civic, the expensive art, a number of other things that I wouldn't pay for. What it means is internally, I am for some reason threatened by the existence of these things. And I'm also threatened by the people who buy them. Why? Why is that? Why am I threatened? And I realized at the end of it, I came to one simple conclusion. I'm an idiot. That is something that an idiot does. And I can't tell you the amount of shame. Here's what's even dumber. What's even dumber is I still have the impulse to do it, to judge, right? You see somebody walking by in an outfit, right? This person's doing nothing. They're just existing, right? They walk by in something that's a little bit off the beaten path according to my universe that has been created around me, my reality, right? Which is, as one silly little blip, one little grain of sand, I've only been exposed to basically nothing. Like if you take, for example, all of time and everybody's different position on just Earth, right? And how they grew up and what they were exposed to. My stupid little bubble, right? I see something that's just a little bit different from my bubble and I'm like, I don't like that. It's different from what I think is the right thing because it's not the shape, it's not the color. Why is this bothering me? Yeah. And the more I think about it, the more that my brain just contracts and goes, you're dumb. You're dumb for doing this because this is just a person walking by and just being. They've made these choices that affect them. They don't affect you. Now, if somebody came up to my front porch, banged on my door and said, you must change to see things the way that I do. I'm wearing this outfit. You got to wear it now. I'd be like, well, no. Also, please leave. Please leave my property. But that's not what's happening. This is just existence, right? If you put yourself in the way of something, if you go out of your way to put yourself into another bubble, for example, if you click on a video, right, and you watch a video, maybe it's accidental exposure. Everybody gets a free pass. Let's say you stumble upon one of my videos, you see a really cool knife. Ooh, cool, right? Dang, $500? Who is this guy? Nah, I'm not all about that. Then you leave. All right, no harm. But if you stay and you keep watching, right, you are exposing yourself to someone else's bubble. It's not just me. You could say this about anybody on the internet, right? Doesn't have to be a YouTube creator, Instagram influencer, whatever. It could just be a person who just likes a certain thing. If you make yourself, continuously a part of their bubble, and then you criticize what they do with their own property, that is something that an idiot does. Just plain and simple, right? Why do people... He's 11 minutes in and he hasn't said it. All he's done is stand up there and preach. This guy really likes to listen to himself talk, and he clearly thinks a lot of himself. He clearly thinks he's intelligent. Get to the point. Dang it. Why do people collect knives and don't use them? Knives are tools, right? That is a common perspective. Hey, MC from the future here. Just wanted to make a quick cut because I didn't do a good job of explaining this. I wanted to make sure that this is very clear. Thinking that a knife is a tool is not only a reasonable perspective, it, for a lot of people, for the vast majority of people, is the only perspective, because the original idea behind a knife was that it was a tool. So I'm not saying that this is wrong to think this. No, this is absolutely, completely, and totally reasonable to assume this, right? This is what we assume at base, because at base, that's what knives are. Anyways, back to the video. It is often the perspective of people who don't actually buy expensive knives. Now, I understand that the word expensive means something different to everybody. The more expensive knives get, right, the smaller the audience that they cater to. And the more likely this audience that is interested is to collect and to preserve. Why? Because a lot of these things in these higher price tiers are meant, they're just as capable as cutting. This is something that, people who don't buy expensive knives don't understand. They assume that as the price goes up, these knives, are displayed as being more capable. In some cases, like the way that the Rockstead's made, sure. So what they do is they convince themselves, well, everybody who buys these knives are stupid because they're clearly it's deceptive marketing, and these things are being marketed as tools that are more capable, dollar for dollar, and I'm not going to be deceived. That's just you telling yourself something that you made up because you don't know. A lot of people don't know what they're looking at, and that's okay. Like, I'm not coming down on anybody. That's the way that I was. Why does the knife cost so much? Knives are tools. Knives cut. So they couldn't possibly be anything else. If you think for a moment, maybe, just for one moment, do you think maybe there are elements that you don't know? We don't ask ourselves that. I don't ask myself that, right? The guy with the Honda Civic. I don't ask myself, I wonder what decisions in his life led to this, right? I automatically assumed that they were bad decisions, but that's just me not knowing literally anything about that person, right? For all I know, that person could be a great person, and that's just something that they like, right? But I've told myself, based on my little baby bubble, right, that type of decision can only be the result of bad choices, which is stupid. That's a baby brain thing to think, right? I know people are going to get mad. You're talking about yourself, but you're really talking about us. Don't get triggered. Listen to what I'm saying. A lot of these people can only view them as one type of thing. They are not familiar with the enthusiast knife world. They don't know how big it is. They don't know how long it has existed. They don't know how potent of a market it is. And the biggest thing, they have no idea how little these types of criticisms affect it. I always use this example. It is literally like standing on a railroad track with a wiffle bat, thinking, I'm definitely going to stop this train. You are not. You will do absolutely nothing. As knives get more expensive, generally speaking, they have more and more and more elements that cater to a huge, massive, whether you realize it or not, massive knife enthusiast community. People who appreciate detail, people who appreciate work that goes into these things, and definitely people who like to collect. Why? Because a lot of this stuff, it is small batch, it's more unique, sometimes it gets discontinued, it becomes worth more money. Now, I'm not somebody who says, definitely buy knives and immediately flip them. There's a whole bunch of people who do that, and I don't necessarily agree with it. But there is, as a collector enthusiast, there is a large amount of satisfaction that I get from having rare things that I know are worth more money than I paid. Keeping them in pristine condition gives me that satisfaction that I cannot get from using it. Some knives I will use. Whether they are super expensive or not, them being more expensive makes me less likely to use them, but I am obviously not against using expensive knives. It depends on what it is. The object itself, people always talk about knives having souls, and to respect the soul, you have to use it that's baloney. There are two souls involved with a knife. Especially an expensive one, right? Unless it's a super expensive production knife, in which case there are multiple souls involved with the creation of it, right? These people presumably are passionate about their craft, and they create these things. If they're making a super duper utilitarian, cheap, inexpensive cutting tool, then they get enjoyment out of the idea of people using these, right? The people who create the ultra expensive works of art, they love the craft in it. Right? And there's probably a part of them, I'm not going to speak for all knife makers, there's probably a part of them, of their soul, that, enjoys the idea of, well, maybe somebody will actually use this. I don't know that, I think a lot of art custom knife makers would cringe at the idea of their craft being pounded through a block of wood. A lot of these things are very capable. A lot of super duper expensive knives are just as capable as the inexpensive stuff. But again, the price goes into the work and all of the, right? For those of you not understanding why it costs so much, labor, manual processes, expensive materials, labor, time, labor. People have to aggressively ignore that at this point. It is so obvious. You have to aggressively ignore it to miss it. Labor, did I say that? But yeah, these makers, this soul, right? They like the craft. That's the part that gets the chemicals bubbling. And that's a big part of this. The chemical reaction, that's what it boils down to. I had this conversation. It was actually a good conversation. It was not an aggressive. It was a polite disagreement between me and somebody else I was talking with in the comments. And this is where the idea for this video came from. And we were talking about, what we get out of this stuff. And this person obviously gets his chemicals bubble for the usage, and my chemicals bubble for something different, and that's it. There is no right or wrong. If you believe that there is an absolute right or wrong, you have to remember that's your little bubble, right? Knife equals tool. Joy cannot come from using it or enjoying it as anything else other than a tool. That's just your bubble. That's just your silly, selfish little, and that's okay, you can have that. But trying to force that bubble on somebody else is a waste of time, and it's dumb. So these makers, I would imagine that their joy, the part that is the soul, right, that goes into it, it doesn't stay in the, that's movie magic, whatever. I'm saying that the soul part is the craft, right? And then the other part, this thing that exists, this object that, whether it is an object that the origins of the tool have a specific purpose or not, its end purpose is whoever it ends up with and whatever they decide to do with it to bring them joy. And it has, at that point, served its purpose. A knife that never, ever gets used, but was, number one, created by somebody who loves to do what they do. They created this. They put everything into this, right? And then somebody, maybe in some cases, the one person who will actually pay whatever the amount is for it, buys it. It is now their property. Everybody in the whole universe is entitled to their own opinion on said item. But the validity of that opinion, or the potency of that opinion, or the necessity of that opinion is absolutely zero. Except for one, there's only one that matters. It's the person who bought it. Remember that. You can have your opinion, but does it have to be valid? No. The purpose of the object, no matter what anybody else thinks, right? If it brings the person who bought it happiness, if they enjoy it, however it is that they enjoy it, it has served its purpose. Period. It's it, right? There's nobody else who can say. People collect, buy, sell, trade for whatever reason that they do, right? As knives get more expensive, the people who are buying, selling, and trading this stuff that are actually doing it are doing it because that stuff in and of itself, the all of the little details, the time that went into it, the exclusivity, right? The exclusivity is a big part of it. The enjoyment of just owning it. There are plenty of people, and I'd say the vast majority of people will never understand that. You just have it and you put it in a box. How could you possibly get enjoyment out of that? You're not me. I'm not you. You don't have to understand. I don't need you to understand, right? Even though I'm making this video where it seems like I'm desperately trying to get people to understand. But I don't go around asking people, why do you have to use that knife to get enjoyment out of it? That sounds like a stupid thing to do, right? Well, it's because tools are, well, you're missing the point. It might just be that you don't quite know. Think for a second. You might not have all the information. Your bubble might not have the same exposure as this other bubble. It's not that this other bubble is a wrong bubble. It's just a different bubble, right? User, non-user, user, non-user, 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 user. Yeah, the non-users on the table tend to be more expensive. They also tend to have elements that cater to the enthusiast, that tickle my enthusiast fancy. So the joy that I get out of those things does not come from use. There is no amount of use that I could get with that stuff that would be the equivalent of the joy that I get from just having it and keeping it pristine and enjoying what it is as an object. And that's okay, right? The truth is I have so many knives. I have used expensive knives. I have used inexpensive knives. I've used sheep's foot blades. I've used Wharncliffe blades. I've used Persian-style clip point blades, drop point blades, weird shovel blades, blades that have coatings, blades that don't have coatings, blades that are made from super steel, premium stainless compositions, high carbon compositions, tool steels, non-stainless compositions alloys that aren't even steel, like dendritic cobalt, right? I've used Vanax. I've used ultra crazy this. I've used all that, right? Yeah, I like using some of that stuff, but I can tell you, as somebody who does have, not all of the experience in the entire world when it comes to using knives of various price ranges, I just flat out don't get the same amount of enjoyment. It's nice to carry a knife and use it, right? But who I am is somebody whose chemicals bubble from the collector elements, the enthusiast elements. And that's okay, right? When I was younger, I used to collect Pokemon cards. And I had a specific process for taking them out of the packs. Because I learned from the card shop owner that certain cards were worth a lot of money. I remember looking into his display case, and he had I'll never forget this. He had a Scyther, a holographic Scyther that he was, and this was like first edition, right? For those of you who are into Pokemon cards now, you're just gonna be like, holy crap. He had that thing out there for $16. And I was like, $16 for one card? Who would ever pay $16 for... I couldn't even finish the sentence before I was getting bumped out of the way by an older kid. He was like, scram, kiddo. And he was like, I need to buy this card, and this card. Immediately, I was like, as a child, I was like, oh my goodness, it seems as though I am mistaken. There clearly is demand for this. The card shop owner was looking at me like, who's this kid? But I remember saying something like, why? I can buy a pack for $4. Why am I buy one card for 16? Huh? And I realized, oh, I'm dumb, right? It's not, no, the kid was dumb. And there's plenty of people here watching right now are going to go, yeah, that kid was dumb. Oh, all my friends. Why do you take those out of the case so carefully? Why do you put them in a sleeve? Why do you put them in a hard case or put them in that book? Aren't you going to use them? Aren't you going to trade them? Aren't you going to play with them? Nope. I'll tell you why. Because after talking to that card shop owner, he explained to me, hey, listen, everything that I learned growing up about baseball cards and, collectible stuff like that is that the buyers who will pay the most when the thing is in pristine condition, right? He said it's not always about selling the card. Sometimes it's just about having it. And he showed me some cool stuff. He said, look at this. This isn't even for sale. It's worth a lot of money, but it's not for sale. Why? Because I want to have it. And I was like, huh? I think I kind of get it. I think I kind of understand, right? Man, eventually I gave in. Not because, I wanted to play with this stuff, but I remember thinking I'm too cool for Pokemon cards. Wow, what a stupid thing that I did. I don't even want to think. Guys, I don't even want to think. Because I started collecting Pokemon cards during the base set first edition days. And I had a lot of stuff. A lot. I don't even want to think about what that was worth. The dumbest thing that I did was listen to those people. The dumbest thing, right? You have to enjoy it this way. You must! Those people, I'm sure, got plenty of enjoyment out of it. And I think that's fine, right? But in that specific situation, I gave in and it was bad. Right? Go with your gut. Enjoy the things the way you want to. Those people who enjoyed those Pokemon cards the way that they wanted to and they beat the crap out of them, they ended up being worthless. Oh, well, they got to enjoy it. Yeah, sure, they missed out on a potential fortune. That's not something that they could have predicted, right? The point is that they got enjoyment out of it. They got something out of it, right? Stop worrying about what other people do with their own property. Worry about your own property. If you buy something, you get to decide what you do with it. If somebody else buys something, they get to decide what they do with it. Every time I hear this. So when I started this channel, I showed some expensive knives that I don't use, and I had a whole bunch of people ask that question. Why do you do this? You shouldn't do that, right? That's a bad way to... that makes me cringe. People like you make me sick. So I continued... here's what I did. I didn't listen to them. I continued to do what I wanted to do, and then my channel exploded, right? Holy crap, am I really glad that I did not listen to those people, because the people who wanted to watch my content wanted to watch it the way that I was uploading, the way that I was displaying my content. They wanted to watch me enjoy this hobby the way that I wanted to enjoy this hobby, because there are plenty of people who also enjoy this hobby the same way. This channel is not meant to cater to everybody. I do my best to keep my arms open. If you want to come and see how I like to do this is how I like to do this, right? But it is not absolutely meant to be understood by everybody, right? It is simply the way that it is. And you don't have to like it. You can enjoy this stuff however you want. So that's why, to celebrate this mentality, I am having, the ultimate, utilitarian blade. The most capable type of blade is a fixed blade. You could argue that no type of blade is more meant to be used than a fixed blade. So in celebration of my own collector and enthusiast habits, and in celebration of the totally justified contrast of that mentality, I am having an absolutely ridiculous custom fixed blade made. And I mean ridiculous. It is super fancy, crazy fancy, caters specifically to the enthusiast, and finally, will never be used. Because that's the way that I like to enjoy it, right? It's okay to like the things that you want. It's okay to do the things that you want to do, right? Enjoy this hobby however you want. But stop coming down on the... Listen, you can attack me, that's fine. It makes me sick to see people attack other people for it. Don't worry about it. It's not your business, right? Long episode of The Knife Guy. Anyways, let me hear your thoughts. I know you're going to give them to me anyway. If you made it to the end, tell me your thoughts down below. Always happy to read them. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.